So something that Apple is really bad at, in my opinion, is educating people who are buying their products on how to actually take advantage of all the great features they talk about in their marketing material. In the new iPhone 16 Pro launch campaign, we saw all this data about how this is the best smartphone camera ever, but there's no real information on how to make the most out of the camera. And that's what we're going to go over in today's video. I'm going to give you a step-by-step breakdown of how to make the most out of your iPhone 16 Pro camera and get the best images possible. And big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. So this video is an expansion of the initial iPhone 16 Pro review that I made. If you caught that video, you know I spent a little part of that video talking about the importance of using RAW formatting, giving a quick breakdown of it. But in this video, I want to go through the entire step-by-step process of making sure you're using this phone properly if the best photos possible is your goal. Now, step one to doing that is simply unlocking your phone and going into your settings. Now, when you're in settings, you're going to want to scroll down to camera and you're going to want to click on formats. Now, from here, we're going to click on Pro RAW and resolution control. We're going to make sure we toggle that on, and then we're going to click on Pro default. This is going to take us to all of our Pro settings. This is all the stuff they talk about in the marketing material about how amazing this phone is, about how great the photos are. To get all that greatness, you got to make sure you go through these steps. What you want to make sure you select is Pro RAW Max up to 48 megapixel. This is going to allow you to get a complete raw image from your iPhone, and it's going to be the maximum data possible. So the max capability of this phone will be captured in this file. Now, these files are a little bit large. That is one of the drawbacks to them, but it just comes with the territory of making the best images that you can. Now, below this, you're going to see Pro RAW format. Now, you have JPEG lossless, most compatible, JPEG XL lossless, and JPEG XL lossy. This is a new feature on the 16 Pro and this recent iOS update. Now, with this, it's not super important for someone who is going to be using the RAW files like we're talking about later on in this video, but where this is important is if you were going to, say, send a photo to someone that you made as a RAW, when you transfer that photo to them, it's going to transfer as a JPEG. If you're someone who finds yourself doing that often, maybe you make an image of your family, for example, and you shot it in RAW because you want to go edit the photo later on. You want to make sure you have all the data there, but you know you're going to send it to your wife or your parents or something. If you want to make sure that image looks good as well, you can try out JPEG XL lossless. This is going to shrink down the file size and it's going to eliminate a lot of the compression that comes with changing a RAW file to a JPEG. The only issue with JPEG XL lossless is the fact that it's not compatible everywhere. So if you make a RAW file and then try to post that RAW file to, say, social media or send it to someone's phone who's not in the Apple ecosystem, they could have an issue with it because they're not getting the RAW file, they're getting this JPEG. If you fall into that category, just play it safe and use JPEG most compatible. So from here, we can jump out of formats and we can scroll down to some of the composition tools. Personally, I love the level tool. I turn on level. This allows me to get an idea of if my phone is straight or not when I'm making a picture. Some people also like to turn on the grid so they can see the rule of thirds, but personally, with the grid and the level lines on, I feel like there's a lot going on the screen, so I would suggest just picking one or the other. I prefer level. Some people might prefer grid. Some people might not care about having both on the screen. Now, from there, we can jump into our actual camera, and the only thing we have to be aware of with our actual camera is making sure that RAW Max is turned on. So when you open up the camera, you might see that RAW Max has a hash mark through it. If that hash mark is there, just click on it once and make sure that you are capturing the RAW file. Now, the reason why RAW files are so important, just to reiterate this, is you have all the data of the photo inside of the file. So something like white balance that you would have to adjust in camera for a JPEG, you don't have to worry about. You can do it in post and you're going to have all that data there. Something like an exposure compensation, you can do in camera if you want for the RAW file, but RAW files are a lot more forgiving and you can do things like bring down the shadows, bring down the highlights in post much easier than you can with a JPEG. So making sure you have RAW Max on is the key when you have the camera app open. Now, the following steps is where everyone gets lost. This is the most important part of the video, but before I get into this, I briefly want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, if you're someone making photos with your smartphone, I'm sure it's crossed your mind at some point how you can potentially make money with this. And one of the easiest ways to make money with your creativity is with a professional looking website, and no one makes it easier to build a website than Squarespace. see, on this YouTube channel, I have multiple tutorials going over different ways you can use Squarespace websites. One is a portfolio page that looks beautiful, so if you're someone who wants to showcase your work, you can go check out that video. I'll link in the description down below. Or maybe you're someone who understands how to use all the different apps that you can get on an iPhone when it comes to photo editing, and you want to sell an info product like a course or a video workshop. I have a YouTube video on this channel breaking down how to create a course using Squarespace. I'll link that in the description down below as well. The reason I'm bringing both those videos up is to show you how many different things you can do with Squarespace. You can simply showcase your work, you can sell things, you can even create a way to cultivate an audience outside of social media with something like a blog or a newsletter, and you can contact people who are subscribed to your blog or newsletter with all of Squarespace's email marketing tools. And on top of that, all of these tools are so easy to create and customize with all of Squarespace's templates and their tools like Fluid Engine. So whether you're someone who's really trying to take their creativity to the next level and turn it into a business, or you're just someone maybe wanting to start a side hustle and make a little bit of extra money, no one makes it easier than Squarespace. And with the introduction of Squarespace payments, you can do everything through one platform: your website, your marketing, and your payment processing. It's never been easier if you're someone who wants to monetize your creativity. And you can go to squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial. You can follow one of those videos I linked down below, and when you're ready to sign up, you can use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. That's squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial, and use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So real quick, I'm going to jump in here and add something to the video, and please excuse the change in scenery. I'm in a hotel room in Palo Alto, California right now, which is actually kind of ironic considering right down the street from me is Apple's headquarters, and we're talking about the 16 Pro, but I'm here for a completely separate project with a different tech company. But what I want to add to the video is something that's going to make your life a whole lot easier, and that is in your camera settings, scrolling down to preserve settings, and inside preserve settings, going to Pro Raw and resolution control. Make sure you toggle this on, because with this on, anytime you open your camera, if you turn on raw files one time, meaning you remove that hash mark, it will stay turned on. So you can open your camera and capture raw files immediately rather than having to turn it on every single time. That leads to the biggest mistake that I see a lot of creators make. If you are capturing a raw file from the iPhone 16 Pro, you need to look for the file type being DNG. If your file type says HEIC, that is not a raw file. Now, in the past, it was very easy for creators to get confused with these file types, because with the iPhone, if you sent an image, say over AirDrop from your phone to your laptop to edit, the iPhone would send that JPEG image that I talked about earlier. You would get the JPEG that was most compatible, and the only way to get around this was clicking on Options and clicking on All Photo Data. This would send a folder to your computer that had the raw file as well as the JPEG in it. Now with the 16 Pro, it's really easy to airdrop photos from your smartphone over to your computer if it's a raw file. All you got to do is do airdrop, and the DNG will get sent the way it needs to. It's not as complicated as it used to be, but what you want to be aware of is making sure that if you are sending a photo over text, over airdrop, over email, you need that DNG file type to be there for it to be a raw file. If it doesn't say DNG, you're not getting the most out of the camera. Now, the second way you can get the photos off of your phone to your computer is obviously much easier, and that is just simply plugging the phone into the computer and importing everything into Lightroom or the software that you use. Now, once again, you want to make sure that you are grabbing the DNG files. Now, when you attach the phone to the computer and you have Lightroom open, these DNG files are easy to see. They're going to present themselves. You just want to look for that file type. Something I like to do here is filter my images by file type, so I just get all my DNG files in one row. So that way, say I accidentally made an image where I forgot to turn the raw files on, it's not going to show up and there's going to be no confusion. Now, once you have all the DNG files properly imported into your editing software, one thing you'll notice if you did it right is the fact that you will see a profile attached to your image. This picture profile will say Apple Pro Raw. Now, what this Pro Raw picture profile does is it emulates what is happening in the phone with your photos. I've talked about this before, but when it comes to smartphone cameras, there is an element of software happening with the files. When you get a JPEG from the camera, there is a whole processing thing that happens behind the scenes. The JPEG is balancing out the highlights, balancing out the shadows. If you get rid of that picture profile on iPhone images, the image is extremely dark and not very good looking, and that is because this picture profile applies all of that back-end software computational stuff to your raw image. So if you are someone who is using presets, you want to make sure that one, you're making sure that Apple Picture Profile stays on the image after you apply the preset. And two, if you're downloading presets, you want to check for presets that have an Apple Pro RAW picture profile built into them. When Apple got serious about their RAW files, I made sure I added this to all my presets. So as you can see, if we go to say standard ramped preset 1 without this Apple picture profile, it looks really nasty. But when I go to the iPhone one that has the picture profile built into it, the edit looks the way it should. This picture profile is a key to making sure your iPhone images edit the way that they are supposed to. So once you go through all that, you have your settings set properly in your phone, you transfer the files properly to your computer, and you edit the files understanding this Apple Pro RAW picture profile, you are good to go. You are making photos that take advantage of all the technology in the iPhone 16 Pro, and you're making images that are as close as you can possibly get to a professional camera. Now, from here, the only thing that can go wrong is you exporting an image. So what you want to make sure is that you are exporting an image at the highest quality possible. Make sure that if you're using Lightroom, you're having the quality set to 100 and you're not doing anything to compress the resolution. I recommend 300 pixels per inch. If you are exporting from, say, an app on your phone, you want to check for these same things. You just want to make sure the quality is at 100, there's no downsizing happening to the image, and you should be good to go. But that right there is how you get the best images possible from the iPhone 16 Pro. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you are not yet, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.